Hello, and welcome to episode number 322 of the Board Game Barrage, podcast to podcast all about board games, the latest hotness, and how to have fun with your friends, even when you're losing. I am joined by one strong Mark.
This is strong Mark.
And one...
I like where this is going.
Neelan. I can't even come up with the adjectives. Introduce yourself.
Hello, it's me.
Oh, God, Neelan, no. What's happened, strong
happened?
Neelan?
What's happened to my beautiful voice? No, this is like something that happened to my throat last week for reasons unknown to me, and that then got exacerbated by being at PAX and shouting.
You're partying at PAX too hard. You blew out your voice.
That must be it. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Neelan on PAX. Today on the show, we're going to be looking back, as we so often want to do, at the year 2024, the best of 2024, the games that people are excited about 2024. Was 2024 a letdown in life and in board game? But before we do that, we're going to talk about the games that we have been playing. Mark is going to talk to us about a game called Let's Go to Japan. I will talk about my play of Mombasa, or Let's Go to Africa. And then Neelan will round us out with the hottest game of the bunch, The Gang.
Or Let's Go to the Mafia.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Go to the bank.
Okay, so...
Let's rob a bank. Mark.
Yes. So I got a chance to play Let's Go to Japan. So, Kellen, before I go any further, we have to talk about the punctuation here, because I know this is important to you, but it's Let's Go, exclamation, to Japan. So I found that difficult to deal with. So just as a heads up for anybody who's sensitive to that kind of thing.
The thing is it feels so cynical, okay? Because they're already thinking about the Let's Go.
Yes, the Let's Go
franchise.
series. The Let's Go universe. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the larger Let's Go universe. Those
Well, a couple of those are Josh Wood, the designer, and AEG, the publishers. So I got a chance to play this in person for the first time yesterday, actually, after kicking it around a couple times on BGA. This was a pretty lavish, I have to believe, Kickstarter edition that came with really chunky counters that may not be the pieces that you play with. I think most of those are cardboard. And in the first four board game components, for me at least, it had ceramic bowls, these lovely ceramic bowls to hold the components, which apparently were also part of this Kickstarter. So pretty lavish. Anyway, in Let's Go to Japan, or Let's Go to Japan. I'm not going to do that anymore, but I just had to do it once. You'll be playing as someone visiting Japan and trying to have the best experience while bouncing between Tokyo and Kyoto. The way you do this is through a series of 13 drafting rounds, most of which follow a similar cadence. Depending on the round, you're going to pick up either one or two pairs of Kyoto and Tokyo cards, place either one or two of those cards into your own tableau, and then place the cards you didn't pick next to your neighbor's tableau. Then at some point, you'll pick up the cards that you've accumulated from your neighbor, draft some of those, pass the remainder along, so on and so forth. But each round has a little bit of a different drafting style, but nothing too wild. When you draft your cards, you're going to be assigning them to a day of the week on your tableau, which represents the week you spent in Japan, presumably, with each day assigned a particular suit of cards. You can assign the cards to any of the days you want, but once 3 cards have been placed on any particular day, that day is full and you can no longer place cards there. If you are able to, in placing these cards out to these days, match the suit of the day with the cards that you've placed on that day, you get a bonus. In addition to the suits of the cards, they'll also give you some number of victory points that are printed on the card, some tags that will accumulate and give you points in different ways. Then whatever card that you've placed in that collection of 3 per day, that is the one that is face up on the stack, that is going to have some scoring criteria that if you meet it via the tags, again, that you've accumulated previously through your week in Japan, you'll score for. So this introduces a planning aspect to the game where you don't necessarily want an ambitious high-scoring card on your Monday when you don't have much time to meet all the criteria that is presumably on that high-scoring card, where you prefer to place a card like that on your Saturday. There is no Sunday in this game. So you can build up enough tags and symbols to score a bunch of points.
There's no Sabbath day.
There is no Sabbath day in Japan. Read your history books. Speaking of points that you can score, you do all the tallying of your points, and I use that long L in the all at the end of the game, and I found myself in this aspect of the in-person play missing BGA a bit, because when you do the scoring, you need to go through each day for every player. So again, you don't do any of the scoring during the course of the game. All of it is done at the end of the game. And the way you do it is like, okay, Cameron, how many points did you score on Monday? All right. Eric, how many points did you score on Monday? Okay, I scored this many points on Monday. How's your Tuesday? How's your Tuesday? How's my Tuesday? And it just keeps going on and on like that. It takes quite a while. So all that scoring can be quite cumbersome and take a while, given the percentage of the game that you spend scoring versus actually playing it. There's more to the game, but you've got the gist there, except for one more gameplay aspect, actually, I should mention, which is another consideration that you make when you're playing your cards, specifically when you're trying to choose cards that are either Tokyo cards or Kyoto cards. As you're laying the cards out on your mini tableaus that represent each day, the idea is that when you're visiting something in a city, if the next card is of the same city, you're fine. You're still in Tokyo. You can visit the other thing. But whenever your cards go from Tokyo cards to then a Kyoto card or vice versa, then you need to get a train to travel between the cities. So that's another thing you need to consider. You pick up trains by meeting that suit bonus that I was mentioning earlier. And if you don't have trains to accommodate the travel going from one type of card to the other type of card, you're forced to take like cheapo trains and lose points to travel. So another thing to consider is like going from a series of pink cards representing Tokyo or Kyoto to blue cards. So you want to keep the suits sort of like together. You don't want to have them mixed up too much, because then you're going to lose a lot of points traveling. Anyway, speaking of those blue Tokyo and pink Kyoto cards, this game is absolutely lovely. Very, very beautiful. Tokaido, another game about traveling through Japan, is a good comparison when talking about how beautiful this game is.
But not as a tourist.
But not as a tourist. Yeah, Tokaido is not as a tourist. You're a monk in that game, right? Something like that. I can't remember. It's been a while since I played it.
It's thematic.
It is thematic. Whatever the actual thing was, I know it was thematic. That's what the first thing pops in my head when I think of Tokaido. Anyway, each card in this game, at least, depicts something potentially to do in Japan. Each card is beautifully drawn. It's just a great, great production. Really, really stunning. So all in all, I really liked Let's Go to Japan. It's a game about having a fun trip and is very evocative of that, but there's a ton of things to consider, as I sort of mentioned, when placing cards. So it's not as light and fluffy as the aforementioned Tokaido or like a theme like that might lead you to believe. That said, as I mentioned, the bookkeeping at the end is a lot. I didn't really mind it myself, mostly because I kind of like how having all the scoring at the end sort of obfuscates who's leading. So you kind of like find out altogether who ends up winning the game. Although there's negative aspects to that, I guess, but I didn't mind it. But I can definitely see people that would be frustrated by the fact that you spend a decent percentage again of the time that you're there just adding up scores instead of playing. I guess the solution there is to play it on BGA, but if you do that, you lose a lot of like the lushness and the loveliness of the game when you play it digitally. But it's obviously going to be a whole lot faster that way. So yeah, that is Let's Go to Japan by Josh Wood and AEG, a game that looks pleasant and serene but hides a whole bunch of choices and considerations that you need to make every time you draft. So for that reason, I think I'll be definitely playing it a couple more times at least.
It's interesting because I just looked up Josh Wood because I wanted to know who I was calling a...
Yeah.
And...
Never stopped you before. But...
Santa Monica, Santa Monica and Cat Lady are both really simple games, but like are surprisingly fun.
Yeah.
Even though the mechanism descriptions of both of them are kind of just like ho-hum.
Yeah.
I remember sort of learning Santa Monica and being like, okay, there's nothing here. And then playing it and being like, oh,
yeah,
there's something here.
Surprise, yeah.
And so even here on Let's Go to Japan, I'm a little like, I'm not sold by your description of it, but I actually have sort of faith based on the track record that if I played it, I would enjoy it more.
Yeah.
Than I'm assuming.
Yeah,
would.
I get you. Yeah, I definitely see that for sure.
I think it's the sort of thing that is obviously carried so much just by its aesthetics, and it does look lovely.
Yeah.
Like, as someone that is like, like Kellen, I am always excited at the prospect of going to Japan. So that is something that is a specific trip I would like to do in the near future. It does evoke that sense in me of being like, okay, this kind of looks like it's doing justice to the location.
Yeah, I think it's definitely doing that. Although I will say, like, to be honest, and this is probably going to sound arrogant, but like if I just heard the title was Let's Go to Japan and I looked at pictures of it and just saw like a very pastel, lovely palette, I would assume that this is going to be a light game. And again, sort of as Callan mentioned when he was looking at Santa Monica, like there's not going to be much to it and it's probably not going to be a game that I would be interested in playing. I would just assume that it was made for the masses and made as a light game. But there is a lot to consider every turn. So Yeah, it both is evocative, but actually there is game there as well.
We won't spend too much time covering Mombasa because we have covered it previously on the show, but I finally had a chance to play it. This is a heavy, very interactive Euro game from Mr. Pfister himself of... What would you say is Mr. Pfister's most famous for? Great Western Trail?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
At this point, Great Western Trail, certainly not Isle of Skye, though people love that. Maybe Maracaibo in the modern era.
Yeah.
For the new people
Broom
who started
service.
playing board games 3 days before yesterday. Broom service. Mombasa was redone as Sky Mines, but most people dislike Sky Mines because you can't see the board and there's color blind problems. The problem with Mombasa is that you're literally taking over Africa, and the game sort of says that you're making trading posts, but you're literally conquesting Africa. So the game is interesting. You both have played Mombasa, right?
Yeah, been a while, but yes.
Yes.
Yeah. The thing I found most interesting about Mombasa is that there's essentially 4 companies on the board, and it's not a cube rails game, but it's not in the same vein as that game where you are essentially allowed to use all your goods to go up and get stock in any of these 4 companies. So you're evaluating, when should I go up in this company versus when should I expand this company versus when should I piggyback on what Neelan is doing with the company. You're also doing a mini game with your cards where your cards are going in certain columns and then you're refreshing them. So you're having to choose when to put cards where and in which column. And all of that is really good, actually. I really, really enjoyed Mombasa. Then, in addition to that, it adds on sort of 2 mini-game systems, one on the left and one on the right. The one on the right is books of some kind, and then the one on the left is diamonds. And they're basically 2 completely non-interactive party side games that you play with yourself that you have to sort of be paying attention to in order to win the game. And actually, I don't know that because I've only played Mombasa once. But I found everything about the board play super great, especially for a Euro. The ability for the board state to change quite dramatically was really crazy. And the sort of open-ended nature of allowing you to just invest in companies and sort of, there was a moment where another player made a critical blunder and helped me win the game because essentially they over-invested and got too close to the top of one of the stock tracks, forcing another player to attack that company. Like he had no choice because at that point the other player would have just won the game. And I literally saw in real time as his mind went, oh no, he's getting too close to the top of the track. And I'm sitting there going, bah, ha, 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 you've invested too much. And so for it to be a heavy Euro game and for that to happen 3/4 of the way through the game, that's a delight for me in the Euro space. I would say that I don't know about the sideboards and I don't really care about playing around with my diamonds or my books, and I wish it was more on the board. And it kind of just made me wish I was playing a Cube Rails game, a Chicago Express, a Mini Express, I don't know.
Yeah.
It just made me feel like there was a lot of Euro on the edges of this when like the main heart of what we were doing. But there was fun because you're buying cards from a card market and upgrading the actions that you have, which is not something you get in those type of games. Mombasa, a very, very good Mr. Pfister game with a theme that you do have to squint at. I know people have rethemed it themselves. I don't know. Mombasa? You guys Mombasa heads?
I remember liking it, but it's been so long ago that even like looking at pictures of it, I'm struggling to remember the specifics. But it sounds like one I need to revisit. So is the general consensus that people don't like the revision?
Yeah, the general consensus is a little harder to see what's going on in the board. There's some color problems, and it's just surprisingly side grade to downgrade in some of those things. But it has other things, like I think like a 2-player mode and a solo campaign if you're into that. I think people like Sky Mines. I don't think it's like hated or anything like that.
Yeah, but yeah. It's just a shame given the theme that like, this was the right time to like make a definitive version, and yeah.
Totally. And I think that was kind of the hope and premise, and then I don't know that it ever... And I actually remember I was hoping to get Sky Mines, and then just for whatever reason a few years back did not make the review list, probably because I kept saying the word And that is how I felt about Mombasa. Neelan, hit us with the hotness.
So yeah, I played a few games of The Gang at PAX this weekend. This is one I was sort of eager to check out, coming off of like a couple of fairly positive reviews. Shut Up and Sit Down, I think, had a lot of good stuff to say about it. This is a cooperative game that is in the vein of The Mind and The Crew, like that sort of style of game, except this one's based around poker entirely. In fact, what you are cooperating over is how good you think your respective poker hand is in a game of Texas Hold'em. So the base plays out like Texas Hold'em, and if you're not familiar with poker, I'll explain what that means. You have a standard deck of cards, everyone gets dealt 2 cards, and then you're going to look at your hand and kind of decide how good you think your hand is before any more cards are revealed. So pre-flop, just your opening 2 cards. And that's going to be based on traditional poker hands. So like if you see, for example, let's say in the best case, you pulled 2 aces. That's obviously a really, really strong hand. Now, between all the players, there are a bunch of chips. Let's say in a 4-player game, there's 4 chips, numbered 1 to 4. You would grab the 4 chip immediately because you know that you probably are going to end up with the best hand based on just those opening 2 cards. Someone that has like a 2 and a 3, or even worse, let's say a 2 and a 4, there's not even a chance of a straight, they're 2 low cards, it's not going to amount to anything, they're going to immediately grab the 1 chip. But the trick here is you can't actually talk about what's in your hand. So that's where kind of like the similarity to The Mind comes in. It's a little bit of kind of like, I think I'm probably on the high end of this. I think I'm on the low end of this based on where my hand currently sits. Then you reveal the flop. So 3 new cards come out, and as in Texas Hold'em, you're trying to make the best poker hand from the combination of your hand and those cards on the table. So now, based on the flop coming out, you decide, okay, I think that my hand is relatively stronger now, or relatively weaker, and you grab another set of chips that are slightly different colored, and now you're looking around the table seeing, are people's estimation of their hands going up, going down, that sort of thing over time. You reveal another card, you do the same thing with another set of chips, another card, the same thing with another set of chips. But all that really matters is that last set of chips. So once all 5 cards are on the table, everyone's looking at their hands, and as long as you get those last set of chips, the red chips, in the correct order, you've won the heist for that round. You get one of the 3 points you need to win a game of The Gang. That would be pretty basic, and in fact, that is actually the basic game, but I think one of the things that does make it a little bit more interesting, a little bit more quirky, is if you succeed in a heist, then you get a little challenge card that sort of changes the rules slightly for the subsequent game. If you fail the heist, you get a bonus card, I guess, let's call it, that'll give you a little boost for the following game. And that's going to be stuff like one player gets to discard a card and draw a card, or in the case of a challenge, you don't get to take chips for like the second round of the game, so you have a little bit less information to work off of. But that is really the gist of it. It's a game of sort of evaluating what you think, seeing where other people are, and kind of like The Mind, it does sometimes devolve into a little bit of like, I don't think you're a 3, I think you're a 2, I think I'm a 3, and there's a little bit of futzing over where in the order you think you quite are. But ostensibly what you're supposed to be doing is looking at people are evolving their opinions over the course of that reveal, and then adjust before you get to the final scoring. Very, very cute game, very simple. I think it does have a fair bit of reliance on like knowing poker hands to be at its absolute best, but even among people that didn't, it played really well at 4. It was a little bit more chaotic. In the bigger games, I played it up to 6, and it starts to just evolve into everyone grabbing the 1 chip, which is kind of funny because it starts to like settle into who has the best high card, the best tiebreaker card. But still, it's simple, it's quick. I had a lot of fun with it. I think especially if you have a group that has some familiarity with poker, you'll definitely get a kick out of this in the same way that anyone with trick taker experience is going to like something like The Crew. Like it's just a little bit of a cool, interesting twist that, again, you look at and you wonder, how has no one done something like this before? Cool little game, The Gang.
Do you get the sense that this has like the legs of something like The Mind or The Crew? I mean, I don't know how strong those games continue on, but I feel like there is some staying power of those. Do you think anything like that could happen with The Gang?
I think certainly as much as either of those games, right? I think that all of those games kind of have the problem that you're not going to play them like 10 times with the same group, right? They are at their strongest when you're kind of showing them to a new group every time. They're easy to break out. They're to some extent perfect con games. I think that's both like the strength and the weakness of this. I think to your point, Mark, yeah, if you're expecting to like sort of break this out with the same group of people, your regular poker players on the regular, it's probably not going to have the same power. You're going to be back to playing poker within a couple of weeks. But I don't know. I think that sometimes games like that have their strengths. It's not exceedingly expensive, relatively speaking, at least. So there's something to be said for a game that's easy to break out with a wide array of people. I would say it is somewhat family friendly in that regard. They do a good job of giving every player a reference card. If you don't know poker hands at all, you can at least have a good reference for what they are. So yeah, I think it probably is in a similar ballpark to The Crew, The Mine in that regard.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in trying this out.
Yeah, I feel like your description, not that it was bad, but actually made me want to play it less. I think it's so poker. And like, I don't mind poker, but I don't understand poker in the context of we're not betting money and trying to like scumbag each other.
I think that this is kind of as more of like a cooperative lark. Like it makes a little bit more sense for me, but I get you. Like I think poker themed games or betting games where there's no money on the line make the stakes feel a little bit lower. But this is kind of more like a poker puzzle, I guess, if that makes sense. They're just played cooperatively.
Yep.
But yeah, that is The Gang by John Cooper and Corey Heath and Cosmos.
All right, here we go. This is all about 2024. Everything we loved. Everyone we loved, everyone we lost.
Yep.
Wow, that's.
We're gonna start with the dark. Start with the in memoriam.
It's so flippant, you know. Why do I have to be the way that I am? How did we feel about 2024 in board games, guys? I will not go first. I feel like I'm well documented on 2024, but I will jump in. Who wants to kick us off? 2024 in board gaming.
I'll jump in, and I'll be honest, like it's not going to be like a super positive call out, but I do think it kind of matches a little bit of all of our sentiments to some extent. And this is fresh in my brain a little bit because this was the topic of conversation I had with a lot of people at PAX over the weekend, where the question came to like, what are you excited to play? What have you been excited to play? What have you been playing this year that was really good? And there weren't a lot of really strong answers to that question. You know, I think with one specific standout, I think there are a lot of people who will tell you that Arcs is one of the best games that they've played. Like there's a certain contingent of people who that is the beginning and the end of 2024 in board gaming. But beyond that, beyond Arcs, I don't know that there are that many standout releases that came out this year. And that just seemed to be a sentiment I heard people express like again and again and again. And that kind of matches my feelings a little bit. Like I don't know that I could tell you that there are more than, on one hand, a number of games I could say were really resonant this year.
Is it an AI hand, Nealon, or a regular hand?
My regular human hand.
One regular human hand.
I think like the numbers even sort of agree with that. And to be clear, like I also agree that I think it was in general a sort of medium to down year. Kellen was mentioning this before we record the show, but if you look up on BGG games that were released in 2024, and if you sort them by, well, I guess we can talk about number of votes, which is what we did pre-show. We'll talk about that later. But if you even rank them by the board game rank, which is like how they fall on BGG's top list, I think it's curious to note that the top game of 2024, which is Harmonies, falls at 148. And it just feels, maybe this is not unusual, but it feels unusual there is not a single game from 2024 that has cracked into the top 100. Like, I feel the games are pretty volatile in climbing up the lists, and the fact that none of them has cracked the top 100, maybe it's nothing. Maybe this is what happens every year. But in seeing that, it just sort of felt indicative of how I felt about the year. Like, if you look at, again, how the 2024 games have fallen in terms of like where they are ranked all time. You've got an order. You've got Harmonies at 148, then Slay the Spire, which I think is one of the bigger hits. Then there's the Lord of the Rings remake of, what is it? It's remaking
Seven
Wonders
Duels. Yeah. Then Arc, as Nealon has mentioned. Then Wormspan, Dune War for Arrakis, Andromeda's Edge, and already now we're already in games that I think were like fine, but not necessarily like blew our socks off. Endeavor Deep Sea, Let's Go to Japan, which I just covered, and Conscious Mind. So, we're already just like 8 or 9 games in, and it's already feeling a little bit on the forgettable side to me at that point. So, yeah, it feels a little bit of, again, medium to down year.
It's funny because, it's obviously too early to say this definitively, which is why Mark's got so much cornmeal in his mouth. Is that how the phrase goes?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I don't know. It's mealy mouth.
Mealy mouth.
So what does that even mean?
Who could say?
It's not cornmeal.
Yeah. That's right.
It's like I was imagining a scenario like 100 years from now where the aliens are listening back to this and they're just like, you idiots, Courtesans, the best surviving game after your species was taken out. They knew nothing. So it is hard to evaluate at this moment in time, but you can kind of sort of look at the wind, look at some other factors, and it really feels like Arcs and perhaps Slay the Spire are the only ones that sort of clear whatever into orbit with the aforementioned aliens. But it also was interesting looking at the list of all the games that people played at PAX, which I did not go to, and a lot of the list looked really similar to the list from last year in terms of games that people wanted to play, like Zoo Vadis, Station Fall, Of What's Left. So a lot of the hits from the last year, and that makes sense. It takes people a while, and sometimes you only get those games played at cons. But there wasn't like a smashing, runaway, midweight Euro success. And so it kind of feels like Arcs is the story of the year, Mr. Cole Worley's masterpiece, even though he already made Root.
I think that that's also worth caveating. Obviously, there is stuff still coming out, and there's stuff that came out last month. As I go down this list, I see stuff like Civolution, which you can never count Feld out for being a hit. That something might become a hit in the long term. Like that's very new. People have not really had their hands on that just yet, but it's just doesn't look overall, I would say, very optimistic on that front from my perspective, at least.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up Civolution because I was doing the same sort of exercise. I was just going through to take, Kellen's like aliens have landed 100 years and are laughing at us example. Like, what games do I think that are 2024 releases so far could achieve that level of like, okay, they have staying power? And to me, it's like, again, I could be proven wrong in 2 years or next year, but like it feels like Arcs, maybe the Dune retheme of Lord of the Ring, the Dune War for Arrakis one, and then Civolution. But after that, I can't think of very many games, or not many games here strike me as like, oh, these could be long-term hits that are evergreens.
Right. I think one of the best sort of encapsulations of this, and for me, and again, maybe I'm wrong, I'm just not trucking in the right circles here, but like Invention's Evolution of Ideas being a Lacerda game, which is near the top here, which I don't hear that many people talking about. Like in a world where every little Lacerda game gets a whole mountain of praise and just time just devoted to like its praises by that circle, I'm not hearing those people talking about Inventions.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And perhaps we should have started, and now we will swing positive from the swing negative, with, for us, sort of the main highlight here is, I don't know, are we calling it Game of 2024 for us as it stands right now? What was the Game of 2024, Mark? You kind of sort of add reverb to my voice. Oh, you don't need it. The Game of 2024. Mark, do you want to kick us off with your Game of 2024?
Yeah, I think for me it was a pretty easy call. This was a game that was introduced to me at Dice Tower West, and it's Cascadero, Knizia's Cascadero. I really, really enjoy this game a lot. It's got that Blue Lagoon through the desert thing, the Go-esque sort of style where you're trying to tempo your opponents, out-tempo your opponents and grab things. So that was my game of the year, pretty clearly, I think.
Yeah, that's definitely high up on my list. I played it this weekend, in fact, introduced it to friends of the podcast, Casey and Benita, and they had a great time with it. I had a great time with it. I like it. I always forget how easy it is to teach and how very relatively low the rules barrier is for that, for like how rewarding a game is. It has, the combo-iness of it, like the blocking nature of it, like just stuff I really love in games, all like rolled into one like very simple and lovely looking package.
I seem to remember only struggling with some of the placement rules.
Yes.
And does that
very simple? Yeah, that very core idea at the front of it. Like once you get past that.
And you feel like that's gone away for you after multiple plays?
No, if anything, actually, like as I was teaching it to them, that was the one thing I had to like, do I remember this exactly? Like I had to remind myself how exactly that worked in the rule book, because it is, there's like 3 twists to like what triggers a scoring that you have to like internalize before the game clicks. But that is just the one thing that once you learned that and once you've grappled with that, everything else just follows on.
Cool. Well, I am happy to go next. I think it is, if you've listened to the podcast, no surprise, but maybe I made a plan when I kickstarted Slay the Spire: the board game, and that plan was to acquire Slay the Spire, the board game, take it home for the holidays and play it with my brothers. Confirmed, mission achieved, unlocked. We did it. We played it over Thanksgiving. We played it for like 12 hours over Thanksgiving. We did one full Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, but with a big lunch intermission. 4 players, like, took over the largest table in my home, and it still wasn't enough. And at the end of it, my brother said, "Oh, leave this here. I want to play it again at Christmas."
Oh, that's cool.
Can you think of a better... It's music.
Yeah.
You know? It's just like, wow, this was all worth it, even though this game was literally $200 and 17 pounds of board game. Slay the Spire is a marvel of converting a video game into a board game. It is cards upon cards, stacks upon stacks. It is messy, but it makes up for it with the fact that if you've played the video game, someone can start playing the board game in, I think, 10 minutes or less and sort of just pick up where they've left off. I don't know where I will net out on how long I will own this game and how many times I will play it, just because it's like cards everywhere and unlocking stuff and systems. And I think 4-player is probably a silly player count to really play it at, but it's so excellent. And as a way to sort of engage with Slay the Spire, it's absolutely a triumph.
I think that my favorite thing for the year is probably going to be, and this is maybe going to feel like a weird pick, but Wilmot's Warehouse is something that I think that for like how light and how silly it is, I still get so much joy from this game every single time I play it. And like, you know, it's pretty different from anything else that we sort of generally talk about. It is so close to just being like the most family friendly party game you could imagine, but it is always hitting with every single person I show it to. And I continue to have great fun with it, like even having played it like, you know, multiple times. I think it's just such a delightful little box of nonsense that's incredible for like how simple it is.
Did you bust this out at the con?
I did not. No, I didn't take it with me to PAX, unfortunately. But yeah, which is a mistake in retrospect.
Definitely top 5 for me as well, because shortly after you guys left, Roselle asked me to pick up a copy because she wants to play it with her family when they come for Christmas. So that is a high praise for me, at least. So yeah, definitely high.
Yeah, I also bought it for Christmas, so we all have had a great time. It's I'm only worried about all the sexual innuendos that I'm going to have to cut out of our story descriptions. It's like, if you're trying to get people to remember something, just add a sexual innuendo.
Right.
Write that down in the box.
I've already told Roselle that's a winning strat. For Grandma, when Grandma's here.
Just oh my God, Mark. I would love a little, like, hyperlapse, like a skit of you just, like edging in there with like more and more inappropriate things, but you're kind of looking around to see how they might take it. You know what I mean?
I'll wear one of those hidden cameras and just like when it comes to my turn, I just make it like super salacious.
But no, it's like mild to spicy.
Right.
Boil the frog. Right. Yeah. They give you the benefit of the doubt, and then you're just like,
I just keep taking another inch each round.
Yeah. Until you get to the plug.
That's right. Definitely coming.
In any story, you can add it.
Yeah.
So that's what we found.
It doesn't take
for
much
a perfect strat
for me to get there.
Well, that's cool. That was positive. Why didn't we start with the positive?
Yeah.
Why didn't
we start there?
Yeah.
I mean, we could blame the host, but I wouldn't know.
Definitely wouldn't want to do that. Yeah.
You put together this outline and told me to read it. So here we are. Okay, so I think the last thing on our agenda here for 2024 is to talk about both things that we look back on fondly from board gaming in 2024 and things we look forward to in 2025, be that 2024 games we did not get to play or core memories that we have locked forever and journaled about. I don't know who wants to go first here.
I mean, I'm happy to go first because I think some of the answers are going to be pretty easy in terms of looking forward to and looking back at. I think my 2 highlights of board gaming this year are far and away going to be Dice Tower West, where we were able to hang out together and hang out with listeners, and that is also part of my look forward to. Like, I cannot wait for Dice Tower 2025 when we have a chance to hang out again and again do the Board Game Barrage game night with patrons. That is always like one of the, if not the highlight of my gaming years. And then obviously, this might be recency bias, but I don't think so. But BarageCon was, again, a complete and utter joy. So that's two things I think were definitely the highlights of my year and things I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I mean, it would be basically the same answer for me. Like Dice Tower West, BarageCon. Anytime I ever have the excuse just like hang out at Mark's place and play games with the three of you is always the absolute highlight. But I will throw onto that list all the other conventions, like all the other little get-togethers. It's always about people at the end of the day that you're enjoying spending the time with, and like the ones that come to mind are PAX this weekend was phenomenal. HarrisCon, which I did with a bunch of friends earlier, which was just us holed up in like a wintry cabin playing games, was also a delight. Just these really great gatherings where you had nothing to do but play games always end up being the highlights of my year.
And I hate conventions. I think even calling BarageCon a convention makes me triggered for what it's worth.
But we have to do that
so
for tax purposes. We need to do that.
For tax purposes. I pay all the taxes.
Right.
You
so you should know more than anybody. You should know more than anybody.
I should know more than anybody, except I'm just like guesstimating shit out of this. I've been scraping off the top for years. I literally don't even know how to do it. Anyway, if you're a tax professional and you want to help me, boardgamebarrage@gmail.com. It's super unclear how to run it quickly with and without it to confirm how much it's costing me per year. I could be making more bank than these two, and I could be getting absolutely destroyed. Who knows? I would say that just quickly, I sorted through some games that I've acquired that are 2024 releases that I want to play. Courtesans, Mark, I know you played this one. I know Shut Up and Sit Down talked about this. Just like a meaner card game with pretty art. River of Gold, another one that I bought. Again, it just looks amazing on the table.
Yeah.
And then one that I feel like there's a little bit of buzz building, Agent Avenue. I don't know if you guys have seen this one.
No.
It's like an I split you choose, bluffing, sort of hand management, really simple game. I don't know why I feel like I'm hearing about it. And so these are 2024 releases that I want to have played in the next little while. So maybe that's possible. Oh, and Bomb Busters, is that one also
I'd
this
like to
year?
try that too.
It is co-op. I don't know. Why did co-op happen? We could talk about that.
That's a good question.
But I think that just getting to sit down and play games with you guys with no context or no ulterior goal was very fun. I know someone asked like, "Oh, why don't you film BarageCon?" And it's like, no, probably not going to happen for a very long time because it's just so nice. Oh, and looking forward, I am getting that Werewolf in the Dark.
Oh, Werewolf
game.
in the Dark, yeah.
Mark, can we play this at your house?
Yeah.
I don't think we can.
Wait, what is,
I don't think Rozelle's going to let us.
what is the premise again? What's the deal
Okay.
with this?
It's from the people Tuesday Night Games, right?
Yeah.
So Alan Girding, they made Two Rooms and a Broom. That's Not a Lemonade. World Championship. It's P.
Yeah.
World Champion Russian Roulette. And you're playing like a werewolf game with super hidden powers.
Okay.
But you're playing it in a house in the dark.
Okay.
And like you have to get like touched. Like if I touch you, you're murdered or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how it works.
I mean, we could
But
definitely
like
do it.
people are like renting houses to play this.
Okay. I mean, like, can you play it a multi-story?
You must be within arm's reach.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know how it's possible. We may have to rent the house next to your house so that Rozelle doesn't kill us.
Right. No.
And then we're playing Werewolf in the Dark.
Definitely.
I can't. I feel like an 8-year-old thinking about this.
When is this supposed to be
And-
arriving?
It was supposed to already be here, but there was some printing error, so I think it'll be here. It'll definitely be here before BarageCon. It's just a question, or not
Dice Tower
BarageCon.
West, yeah.
Sorry, Dice Tower West. And that's my look back and look forward. Obviously, that was very put together. Those thoughts. We do want to know what you think about 2024. I'm sure there's a lot more enthusiasm amongst the youth now that we've sort of all aged out. Yeah, what do you think about that?
What, aging
We're not
out?
the children anymore. We had
a good run while we were
Yeah.
all in our mid-30s.
All in our primes.
No, I was in my 20s when we started this, my home.
Yeah,
Brett.
those days are gone.
Barely.
Those days are gone.
Those days are gone. Yeah, I'd be curious what people thought about 2024. What did we miss? What should we have been talking about? Tell us how wrong we
Yeah,
are.
if you're very pro 2024, I would love for you to go to our Discord, to the podcast channel, and make your case. I really want to hear the enthusiastic takes for 2024. I'm very curious to hear those.
And that is going to do it for our episode on 2024. Thank you so much for listening to the show. You can reach out to us at boardgamebarrage@gmail.com. You can chat with us in our Discord at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord. Thank you for the discourse on the Discord.
Look at that. Look at that.
Thank you to Hearts.
That's wonderful. Wonderful wordsmanship there.
Thank you. What I'm known for. That and a few for everybody. Thank you to Heart Society for their song What's on Your Mind, Kid, from their album Wake the Queens. You cannot find them at Heart Society Music. Thank you and good night.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Takes for 2024. I'm very curious to hear those. Kellen?
Sorry, I just
No worries.
there's a work chat that I
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
It was just a very, very prolonged silence.
Well, it's like we went in though, covered our bases, got some interesting answers,
Wait, what?
To what?
and this is like not good. I'm like, oh my god, dude. Okay. Anyway, okay, never mind. That's it, right?
Yeah, that's it.